issues with someone like me coming in, creating a space of beautiful beauty, love, harmoniousness, building a nation with women, sisterhood, families, men coming in, healing, children, babies being born on site, all these wonderful things that I had in my mind in creating this wonderful facility could not be harmonic in a place where there was such complicity and lack of discernment and spiritual advancement and a knowing that would make us feel harmonious, at least in my mind. Okay. It is no shade, but there is shade, because if you are, and I've talked about this before, you know, this is the land of the Orishas, the land where people who are very spiritual, they develop in a still practice of doing kumbale, and also doing, you know, like capoeira. You know, capoeira is like that dance. You know, it's like a form of martial arts that the men do, and movement that's spiritually based, but it's like, you know, very African origin built. They still are very much into that. And when you see that people are in a rudimentary kind of religion still, where it's still rooted in African traditions that are connected to slavery, you do know that they're kind of tethered and limited. So if in fact the Orishas were so powerful and wonderful and so austere and so wonderful to the people, how come they didn't get the warning? How come they didn't get the FYI? How come the spiritualists didn't say, yo? Ashun was like, yo. Ashun was calling like, yo, you're not going to take that shot because you know what's in it. It's poison. So you, all my people up in the wonderful Orisha houses, they didn't get that. So when you overstand and understand, my dog is doing this, that there isn't a higher force, and people who are engaging and being mounted by beings that are supposed to be connected to, you know, higher forms of consciousness, and they weren't giving warnings to the people, nor were they initiating them to even question it. You have to ask yourself, are those connections spiritually higher? Or are they rudimentary religions that are still based in victimhood and slavery-based mindset that still puts them in a layer of 3D behavior and connection that disallows them from having anything above and higher? Okay? It's just like when you have spirituality, like you never stay in first grade forever, right? If you learn spiritual things, right, do you always stay in first grade or do you graduate? Okay? What, you know, just like with religions, there's always a cap. Like, how far can you go? You know, even with the whole Masonic thing, like there's degrees, right? So you get past first degree, seventh, but you elevate to different systems of understanding, overstanding, and teachings as you evolve, right? So you learn, let's say I learned mathematics, base mathematics, right? 1 + 1 is 2. In some of your worlds, 1 + 1 is 3. But in my world, it's still 1 + 1 is 2. Okay. So 2 + 2 is 4. Okay. So that's rudimentary. Okay. But after I gain that basic principle of mathematics, I can eventually go up the ladder, and eventually I can hit the ladder where I can engage in supreme mathematics, which some of you know who are Masons, who are Moors. I think the Moors, you guys know about supreme mathematics. Some of those in the different orders of the Scottish rites, and so also know about supreme mathematics. That's when you get to a higher form of quantum mathematics, where you kind of bring in geometrical numerical values, and you work with those within the biorhythmic numbers of this simulation. Is it the Nation of Islam? Is it the Nation of Islam? Oh, maybe the Nation of Islam too. So the 5%ers, the Nation of Islam, the Moors, and actually the Masons, I think, are into that. I'm not sure if the Wiccan, the witches, the Wiccans, the other occultists are into that, or they may call it something different. Okay, so that being said, I bring that up with Brazil not to criticize them. I think, like I said, I love Brazil. I'm connected. I talk about having a genetic connection and meeting my grandmothers in the etheric realm, that they were stuck in a loop because when the others came, the colonizers came, they brought some form of technology. So when people transcended and died, the natives that were killed, they were caught in an energetic loop that put them right above the reality, and they didn't know they were dead. So when I went there as a physical representation of my ancestors with the same genealogy, it keyed up. It actually was, you know how you beam me up, Scotty? I had the molecular structure, the key. This is what I'm going to talk about in a minute when we talk about the flux capacitor. I had the key that as soon as I landed on the terrain that my family had not lived for at least maybe 1 or 2 generations from South America, I actually unleashed, keyed up to the reality where my grandmothers were existing with all these other native people that they didn't know that they were looping. And once I did that, I was able to access them and free them from the loop. And that's when one of my grandmothers taught me how to do a form of energetic, what's it called? Energetic, what is it called? The needles in the skin. She taught me how to do that, which was amazing. And she took me to a place that was underneath a cave, like a waterfall cave. And she actually taught me this. It was like blue lights, and I can actually see the different veins on the body that were like maps. And she taught me how to do that energetically. It was amazing. I didn't even know that she existed in this locked realm. Acupuncture, thank you. Acupuncture. So, it was one of the things that I first learned that it's important for you. And that's why I also think that Willy Wonka and his League of Doom don't want you traveling to places where your ancestors once roamed. You're going to be called to those places because you are the key. Everyone has a genetic coding. And with the coding, sometimes the information is locked until certain time frames when there's a certain energetic frequency that the collective rises into or an environment does, which allows you to unlock codons within yourself or within triggering those family members that will bring that information to you when you unlock it in them. Okay, so at this time, you may be called to places where Granny was. So I hear a lot of the Zumbi say, like, Aziza said on our channel, like she was called to Georgia. Georgia was called, I get chills when I say that, called to Georgia. And she gets to Georgia and like there's a feeling, a connection, a smell, a taste. That is the triggering effect. Genetically, we're connected to terrain where our family members had lived, especially for a duration of time. Okay, there's an energetic bleed over that still exists there. And if they had any coding or anything, you can access that now, especially because we're going into time where there's going to be reset and pole shift. All doors can be unlocked if you qualify for that. Okay. Hey, ribbit. Yes. Oh, wait. Yes, I'm a froggy. I should do my my froggy ribbit, right? Ribbit. I'm a trans frog, y'all. If you don't know, now you know. So that being said, you may be called. Now, Willy Wonka is trying to stop. Now, what I noticed with this time with me traveling is the resistance was so different because there was a resistance of me, not so much of me leaving, but you can see it was a general resistance that disallowed, they didn't want certain kind of people. What people are we talking about? Are we talking about you and me? I think so. Certain type of people of a certain consciousness having the calling, like a bird, my dogs, the calling to almost like a migrational call. And what I noticed is that when I got to Chile, there were so many things that were set up in Chile that I was kind of in shock. And it wasn't until we reached Chile, which is absolutely a beautiful country. And I have to say, like, I didn't expect, Chile was one of those places that just was on the bucket list. It wasn't a place that I necessarily thought of anything. I was looking for new places to scout for my sanctuary. But I really didn't have an expectation of it until I got there. And I realized these mother freakers right here don't want you going there. I understood. You know when you grasp something, but you have to go into it to get it. It wasn't until we landed Now, Chile is beautiful. We went to Santiago first, and I tell you about the terrain, the Andes Mountains surrounding the airport. It was nothing I've ever visually seen. So you get the triggering effect. And then I talk about the dome. So I'm jumping in a dome I've never been into. But when I jumped into it, I had memories, smell, taste, and visuals. So I say to myself, why would I have this? I don't know of anyone who's been here that's family member. And it wasn't until we got there, I was like, something is familiar about the terrain. Now, Chile, to me, what they don't want you to know is that their economy is better than ours. When they tell you that the United States is the bomb.com, it is a lie to you. They want to keep you complicit and complacent so that you'll sit nicely and take your Kool-Aid of poison every day and not look outside of your dome. Okay? That's why they don't tell you any different. When I'm going there and I'm seeing that their currency outweighs ours, I'm going shopping and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Why am I paying more money when I'm shopping? Because their money is higher than ours. The value of the currency outweighs ours. It is right under the euro. Did you know that? No, you wouldn't know that because they tell you that the United States currency is the bomb.com, which is a lie. They don't tell you that when you go to a country that is so comfortable, and big up to the Chileans, because the reason why I wanted to go there is because I wanted to go to a country where the majority of people were O positive. And what I found to be just as refreshing is that when you live somewhere where the majority of your blood type is reminiscent of you, everything from the food, the environment, the music, the communication, the work is going to match in alignment with everything that matches with you. So when I go into an O positive majority country, and they changed it since I looked, it was 70%, y'all. They changed it because when I looked the first time, it was 70%. And I know it's true because as soon as I got there, everything was reminiscent of everything that I represent. Everything was reminiscent of Chile, of O positive. When we went out to eat the first night, I had eaten a kind of chowder, like a souffle kind of chowder. It had meat at the bottom, but like a sweet corn at the top. And I took one bite of it and had a memory. And I said, what the freak is this? I'm having a memory while I'm eating this. And I'm like, I've never had this before, but I've tasted this before. So I'm thinking to myself, like, this has to be some sort of cellular memory. So I call my mom. Hey, Mom, I'm eating this, like this dinner, yada, yada, yada. I'm drinking that. I'm eating this and so on. She was like, oh, my grandmother, y'all, the one, remember I told you I'm generation out. It was her mother, her grandmother, who was from South America. So now I jump out into a world where I'm eating a meal that her grandmother, which is my great grandmother, used to make for her. How is that possible? Was she ever in Chile? This is where I'm saying that it's important for you to access certain places where your ancestors used to be because the cellular memories wake up your codons. So now I'm remembering a meal that I've never had, but my mother's grandmother used to make for her quite often. Okay? So as I'm there, I'm eating the food that is reminiscent of my body. My biological makeup is my stomach, where many of I talked about before when I was in the States. I'm back in the States just for a minute. I'm going to leave again. But when I was in the States, my tummy was really bothering me. And many of you know over the years, I don't care what you say on my thickums, I eat really well and healthy. Many of you know I fast quite often. I'm very mindful of the things I put in my body and on my body, or in my body, right? So my stomach was not doing well before I left. I went into Chile for 2 days, less than 48 hours, and my entire stomach healed itself within that period of time. And I wasn't watching as much of what I ate there because I just was getting there. We're kind of going out to dinner. I didn't have the same restrictions that I have in the States. We're making sure I only eat organic. I make sure I don't mess with the dairy. I don't mess with certain things, like I do in the States. But what happened is that I'm going into a country where the majority of people are O positive. Even in the behavior patterns, They were conducive. They were calm like an O positive, very confident. That's why their economy is doing well, because it is a country that's driven by O positives. Remember, O's are very assertive. They are the leaders. They are what is it like? Innovative. You know what I mean? They're just, very strong willed. This is why when you go in a country where it matches you emotionally, spiritually, I mean, the people were so calm and confident. I mean, I went inside and all the concepts and constructs of racial tension and biases and people not liking brown people or lunar people, that all ended as soon as I entered Chile, because there's an ambiguousness about the people. I'm not saying that there was a beautiful confidence about the people. And going in, we had our luggage didn't come for like 3 days because there was a storm in Miami. That's where we came through. And a wonderful Chilean, a lunar looking appearing man, took his time to help us with everything, to help us to get ourselves acclimated, what we needed, where we could go, and so on. And that was generally the position of most of the Chileans, if not all, in our entire stay in Chile, from going from all the way to the north to all the way to the south. Okay? Why do I bring this up? Because in Chile is where I experienced a genetic unloading and a surge of an awakening in my DNA. So it was literally the first part of my flux capacitor, because my flux capacitor wasn't working in the United States. I was getting information. I always have connection to the other realms, but there was something that wasn't quite working. And you can see, and when your body's not doing well, if you're not feeling good, if you're always feeling like you're stressed, you have headaches, you have tummy aches, your technology, your biological technology isn't going to work at its maximum capacity. But if you go, and I realize now that innately, my intuition in going through the different segments of Latin America, South America, literally triggered my technology to turn on. So Chile was the kickoff. Big up to Chile, above and beyond anything I could have perceived. Okay, we went from the north of Chile, which is still very south to us. And I will say this, coming on the plane, going into Chile, because generally many of you know when I go into South America, I generally stay in the north of the South America. So remember, everything's flipped seasons. So for many of you know that for right now, we're experiencing summer in the northern hemisphere of the Americas. In the southern hemispheres of the Americas, Brazil, Ecuador, Venezuela, Colombia, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, Bolivia, they're all experiencing winter. Okay. But the more south you go is more cold, and you experience more of the winter. And the more north you are experiencing, like how Florida is to us in the United States, the south is more warm, whereas in Brazil and in South America, the north is cold. I mean, the north is warmer and the south is colder. Okay. So I ended up going all the way to the south of Chile. And during this time, my body started to open up and become more receptive to energetic frequencies that I wasn't accustomed to. Because now I'm not just going to South America and staying in the northern hemisphere. I'm going more south, triggering for my DNA to be activated. Okay? So that traveling, my technology, which I'm going to talk about, the flux capacitor, which is the same device that you see in Back to the Future. If you have not seen Back to the Future, I know for you younger folk, younger sea stars and sun stars, this may be a little corny for you because it's a movie that's, back in the days where technology wasn't as great, right? So, when you watch the movies, you think it's a little corny, but it really speaks to the technology that is within many of us. And I say many and not all because not everybody has this ability to access the quantum field. Okay, based on not qualifying in previous lifetimes to be able to have the technology to descend. Notice I won't be saying ascending anymore, because it isn't going up, it's going down and in. Okay, so we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. So as you know, I traveled, I unleashed, and I went to the South. My technology, my biological technology turned on. It literally allowed for more frequencies, more resonance, to be able to, for me to access more resonance. Okay. So that being said, I'm going to talk about the flux capacitor, and then I'll talk about, because you know, when I talk about the little beings, the little elves that I had contact with in Argentina, the pinguins, they were beings that I understand, overstand now, were generally accessible because I now became my Wi-Fi, my band was now expanded and working at a higher capacity. It's kind of like how they say 5G, even though 5G is a psyop. Okay, because I was all through South America, and I got better reception in 3G that we're supposed to get with 5G. That's a whole psyop, y'all. That's to make you qualify them to put all these towers on that I personally now know, as I've traveled through the South, came back to the North, that they put those towers on to limit our broadband abilities. It is limiting our ability to access different spectrums of sound frequency and photonic light. Okay, that is a cap. So that is meant to insulate and isolate those within this dome we call the United Fakes. Okay, I call it the terror zone because we're in here with a whole bunch of sociopaths. But like I say, the most conscious people are coming out of the Americas. So it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's like the best and the baddest are up in this piece. So as you begin to get access, because your broadband allows for wider range of radio frequencies, light frequencies, photonic light to be accessible, this allows for you to be able to transmute negative ions and your technology to start to turn on, which is the flux capacitor. Now, when we talk about the flux capacitor, let me kind of, because I took the notes, y'all. So please put a like on the video if you're up for this. And I got this little scientific today. I hope it's not beyond your capacity to understand, or at least allow me to share it with you. Okay. So when I came, I talked about going so far south that there was resistance. And I understood that when I was in Chile, they didn't have a lot of information about what was going on in our side of the world. Remember, we share the same continent, right? We share the same continent. And I talk about this with you all the time, is that many of you talk as far as traveling as if you are living on a continent. We would talk about our beautiful family in Africa. We would say, oh, the Africans. Don't you realize that you say it so matter of fact, even though Africa is like, God knows, 20 times the size of our country, of United States. You could fit Asia, Europe, and US up in Africa and still have room for other countries, okay? So they are a huge continent. It is a huge continent. So when we talk in terms of Africa, you say it as like Africa is just a country. Africa has 54 plus countries, okay? Okay? And you do realize that we're living in the Americas, that the Americas, we have different countries within the Americas that we as Americans should access. Instead of you thinking in terms of like separating yourself from Mexico, from Ecuador, from Costa Rica, from Peru, from Argentina, why do you separate yourselves? Because that's purposefully done it, and we've been socially engineered to separate ourselves in our own continent, but we unify other people in other continents like Africa. We put them in one big bubble, right, in Africa, as if it's one place. It has got so many different terrains, more than ours, way more. But in our own neck of the woods, we refuse to do that. That is a form of social engineering and purposefully done. When I went to Chile and they had no idea what was going on in our hemisphere, same with Brazil, very limited information, like that's why they don't have prejudices against brown people in Chile like they do in the United States. If they were influenced by the United States shenanigans, the Chileans would have treated me like I'm treated when I go shopping, even though I probably have more money than some people in the store, like a criminal. And I always have to keep my hands out, always have to show my stuff in my bag and verify that I'm not a criminal because I have brown skin. When I'm in Chile, I talked about this all the time, and I know many of you get sad, but it's a wonderful, empowering thing is that I was out there. Remember, we didn't have any of our luggage. Our luggage didn't go, so I had to buy my children clothing because it was cold. We're in a colder hemisphere. It's cold. It's beautiful, but we don't have anything to wear. So I had to go shopping. And I'm accustomed to going shopping in the United States and always having to show what's in my bags. If I go in a fitting room, or if I'm walking around and I shop from another store to another store, I'm always very conscious, like a free slave. That master might come and just try to qualify me as a slave again. It's a mindset. It's not true. Remember, there isn't any victims here. I'm just telling you what's in my mind from being socially engineered to have a constant feeling that I have to qualify myself as a non-criminal or a non-slut or a non-thought or a non, you know what I mean? Or educated. It doesn't mean it's right. I'm not justifying it. I'm just telling you how I felt. And it shows up. I don't know that I have this social engineering. I don't know that I'm under that mind control programming until I have to show up with it. So I'm in the store shopping, and everywhere I'm going, I shop for my children, and I'm showing about, no, you don't have to. And I was like, oh my God, I'm suffering from mind control. I'm suffering from mind control programming. I'm suffering. Like, I didn't even know. Sometimes I think I'm progressive. I'm chilling. I travel a lot. I'm like, I'm good. No, because I'm in a country that does not have the influence of United Fakes on it. So it isn't constantly challenging me to verify and qualify myself as a non-criminal. You understand? So now I'm healing because now I've been made hyper aware that I'm suffering from mind control programming from my previous dome, and that the people of this dome are not being exposed to the social engineering of hating all brown people, think we're all criminals and we're low vibration, we're not educated. Okay, they aren't being exposed to that. Even though they're like a fusion of different kinds, because when you go to Chile, it's very ambiguous. People look maybe lighter skin with hair like me, or you'll see a girl with a little darker skin, maybe very Asianic eyes and a big afro. They're very ambiguous. You know what I mean? So there's like a fusion of the people there. And there's a huge population of Haitians there. Big up to my Haitians, ça passe, to the Haitians in the house. What I found was very beautiful in beautiful Santiago, Chile, is that the Haitians were invited to go to Brazil and to Chile. And I saw beautiful Haitian people, brown people walking around, happy, in all types of positions, powerful positions. You could see by the way they dress. Like, you could see them dressed in high-ended clothing like they were going to a business corporate meeting. I see them doing regular things. And it was so beautiful to see that when a Haitian walked by, a fair-skinned Chilean, that they weren't grabbing their purse. I'm talking about the social engineering that we experience, and this is very important when I talk about when your technology changes, because you are experiencing something outside of your reality, your dome. So now things are being triggered in you to overcome, like, because they're muters. So now I'm watching Haitians walk by lighter skinned, very fair skinned people, and they're not grabbing their bags. They're not even turning around to look at them to see if they're going, nothing. It was such a wonderful reflection of my mind control programming so that I could unwind it, see it for what it was, and release it out into the stratosphere. Because now I was existing in a world where those social cues and hues aren't being constantly reminded to people through forms of constant social engineering through television, radio, and other things. One thing I will say about Chile, the music was independent, which is reminiscent of being an O positive country. I had heard hip hop, because I'm a hip hop head. Many of you know I love my Caribbean music because my mother and father used to listen to soca all day. Caribbean soca. They love Sparrow. Big up to all you West Indians or children of West Indians. My dad loved to listen to soca, especially Sparrow, right? Mighty Sparrow, right? 5 cents, 10 cents, $5 cents. Pick up your wine in, big bati wine. Many of you know we're dancing people, Caribbean people, right? So many of you know. I know some of the Caribbean children of Caribbean people, you know what I'm talking about. Because when you go to Carnival, you know we hear our calypso. Okay, soca, calypso. Come on now, right? Wine, wine, wine. Anyway, so it's beautiful. So I love that I heard beautiful new music in Chile that I have never listen. I'm a hip hop head. I grew up in the 90s. You know I love hip hop. I'm from New York. It was where hip hop was at its strongest. Listen, I heard things in Chile. I wanted to write down every name of their music. They are very beautiful, musically independent, unique. Nothing I've ever heard in any other country. I was sitting there listening to music inside of the Ubers. We get in the Ubers. I was listening to music like, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Triggered. Because now I'm unwinding, I'm unraveling the mind control program. So I'm dumping it, right? I'm getting new programs and dumping the old programming because I'm realizing, because you can't change what you do or you aren't acknowledging. So now I'm changing things based on acknowledgement that the technology that I had was being capped by social engineering that was purposefully instituted inside of our dome in the United States to constantly keep us in a residual loop of subsidiary patterns of mindset. You don't know that you have this form. It's the same thing when I put the crayon today and it triggers people to have a response. When I put a brown crayon on the thing and it says black, because most people don't realize that's some form of mind control. My skin is copper. If I took a copper penny, I am the color copper. As you heard, many of the natives back in the day were copper color. So it's so funny that social engineering has made people perceive people of copper and brown skin as black. When in fact, the trees are brown, squirrels are brown, there's rabbits that are brown, there's brown bears, and you wouldn't ever call a brown bear a black bear. You wouldn't mistake a tree as having a black tree trunk. You wouldn't have mistaken a branch as being black. But why, when it comes to certain people, it's a constant reminder of calling people what they aren't. It's like, oh, the sky is purple, and you look in, obviously the sky is blue, right? The sky is purple. The school, oh, the sky is purple. The purple sky. So now you create a whole system where there's a perpetuation of a lie that will constantly keep people in a loop to uphold it. Okay, that's why it's very important for you to jump domes. And that's what I'm talking about. The flux capacitor that's within us gets activated when we take off blockers, like almost zip ties, like cut the zip ties off. Okay, you know when you buy something new and sometimes they have zip ties so it doesn't displace, a piece of the equipment, or you tie it to bind it, you're cutting off zip ties that were on you. And these were purposeful zip ties. Okay, is everybody with me? Put a like in the video if you're up for the shenanigans. I know I have to kind of start at the beginning to get to my point, and I hope it doesn't bother you. A lot of people get to the point. If you want a channel like that, I'm certainly not the channel. I'm a chatter. My dad loved to talk to everybody. My mom was a teacher. I love to chat with you. It's like having a conversation with you over coffee. It's my personality. If this kind of share isn't in alignment with you, it's because this information isn't for you, and you should go to another channel that's more in serving you what you desire in the way and fashion you desire it. Okay? I'm for those who are in alignment with that, and they get the gems because they are in alignment with my frequency. If I agitate you or I take too long, you're not in qualifications of getting the information. It's like putting a big dragon in front of a very precious stone. The dragon is to deter you. My banter is to deter those who aren't qualified for it. Booyah. Booyah. And I am a bit antagonistic, but I'm Creole. I'm also from New York, and I'm a woman of a certain age. It is what it is. And I'm a trans frog, and I'm a gay Jewish man and a black man on payday. I mean, God, you just got to take that. Okay. All right. So when we talk about that, the triggering effect of the music, everything coming in, I realized that the form of mind control that each of the domes has doesn't always exist in the other ones. Okay, so it's important for us to, if you aren't traveling outside the dome, this is another thing I want you to realize. Watching places that you are feeling drawn to, because it's not like, I love that Jewel Brookman, and I say big up to Rich, who had Jewel Brookman on. I love Jewel Brookman when she's on. She still blows my mind. Like, I think I'm conscious until I listen to her. I'm like, okay, I gotta grow. I gotta upgrade myself. You know what I mean? So when we talk in terms of like going out of the dome, there are ways that you can do it without doing it. And I always say I want you to physically do it, but there are travel channels, places. So if you're being drawn to like Ireland, I had a girlfriend who was like drawn to Ireland. She loved it. Like, she used to dream about it, like dreaming of the green rolling hills, like smell the grass, you know what I mean? And her ancestors are from there. So she was getting the call of the activation. It's literally you getting the herding call. You're being herded and drawn and told to go to the place to activate something in you. And she couldn't quite go right away, but what she would do is watch these wonderful travel channels. People were traveling there, going and doing walks, like the 401k walks. And she was getting like memories from that, just from watching the videos, memories. And it was really enough to keep her just, you know, kind of satisfied enough. So she didn't have to necessarily spend all the money to go on a plane, but eventually she was able to go. And then she received like messages, like spirits talking to her, like her ancestors from like a grave. It was so touching and beautiful, and so healing and masterful, that literally in itself, it allowed her to eventually to marry a guy of her ancestry, a guy in Ireland. I think he was from outside of Dublin. I don't know the places, but I remember the name. If I heard it, it's outside of Dublin. And magically, she met him on a train ride across, where she was going to see her grandfather's grave. Like, going, isn't that so? That's what I'm saying. Like, everything these things unlock, and you have access to certain things or people when you kind of jump into a dome that's calling you, especially if it's ancestral base. Okay, so let's go into I keep saying we're going to go into the flux capacitor. So why I wanted to bring this up is because during my transient movement through Brazil, I was literally triggered. Bam. And I didn't know why I was getting issues booking. Now, why it's important for you to always follow your first mind, and this is where I learned that from Dr. Deborah Blair, is because I had to go to, because I had a place in Bahia. My friend, you know, I had some stuff in Bahia. I had to move around. So I had to get there. So when I got to Sao Paulo, I knew I had to go to Bahia, but every time I looked for a flight, I couldn't get the perfect flight. And it was just agitating me. I was like, okay, I know I have to go there. So why am I getting this kind of resistance? And then all of a sudden in my head, just drive. Out of the blue. It was my own voice. It wasn't another voice, just drive. And I'm like saying to myself, like, what? Drive? I was like, yeah, let's drive. Just that quick, that easy. And I was receptive to it. Okay. Get the rent-a-car, call the place, see it. Oh, it was affordable. It was doable. It was easy, breezy, cover girl. I said, all right, let me go and get the car and let's go. And because I drive in Brazil all the time, that's why I say it's not for everybody. My journey is different from everyone, but I'm sharing this because it shows so much how you will always have the answers, and you'll always be told, driven in a direction that's most viable and permissible to you. For others, driving through Brazil would be insane. I'm a driver. I'm from New York. I drive in Brazil with the mopeds and everything. I've been driving in Brazil since 2018. Not so much Paolo was the one who drove the first year, but after that, I've been driving ever since. I feel comfortable and confident. As you see, I'm here, even though the car broke down 2 hours before we got to Sao Paulo on our way back. But that's another conversation, the car, because the terrain in Brazil is buck wild. But I realized that there was something that I had to experience, and it was, hindsight is 2020. It wasn't until after I started the drive, I realized the geometrical photon expressions, because now I don't have Wi-Fi all the time, so I'm not being bombarded by 5G. I'm there, that's done. I'm in Brazil is very, like, it has wonderful terrain, but it could be city, country, you know, totally jungle in a matter of, you know, moments. So Wi-Fi, you have enough for travel. So we make sure we always have a map, but you aren't being bombarded with constant Wi-Fi radiation that's bombarding your mind, kind of muting your ability to receive certain kind of quantum information or photonic information. So as I'm driving, I'm receiving all these visuals that are geometrically based in the way that I could never see. I saw terrain that I know was alien. It just nothing I've ever seen in my life. Not on a magazine, not on not in space, not on an alien show, that could prepare me for the visual stimulation that I was going to be exposed to, that literally triggered for my technology to turn on in my body. And that's why I say they're purposefully demonizing and deterring people from entering into places that would qualify them to now access quantum field, um, um, like traveling. Okay, so now I'm perceiving, and I have pictures. I wish I could show you, because I'm on my phone, so I wish I could show you pictures, because it's, like I said, it's nothing like we woke up one time, I was driving in the dark, and normally I don't like to drive at night, and that's really big in Brazil, because Brazil is, when I say it's black, it's dark. Like, have you ever driven in Virginia or in the South or in Georgia when it's dark on a dark country road? No, that ain't got nothing on Brazil's darkness. It's like black. It's like the midnight. It's like the midnight train. It's like the black hole. As such you win. So there was a point where I was driving, and I wasn't too far from Bahia, but I know it's far enough, and there's only so much daylight. Many of you know who travel into South America that you only have so much daylight. So if you don't leave early enough, the sun goes down at 5:30 every day, and they don't do the sunlight saving times. So every day 5:30, the sun, you see it goes. I don't even have to look at the clock. It's perfectly in alignment. Goes this way, goes above you, and I know it's going to get dark. So I had to pull over and the last rest stop, because I'm driving on a road behind a truck, just using him as my guide. And I figured I have to go, because, I'm driving with my family, so I want to make sure I'm safe. Drive off, and, we rest in a truck stop. And the truck stops, let me say, Brazil has some of the safest, most beautiful, healthiest truck stops. And the men in Brazil are mad protective of, especially women. And I know that's not something you've heard. I know it's not something maybe you hear often, but the men, when they see that a woman is traveling, especially with her family, they rock on. Like, I'm talking about, they almost like line up to make sure you good. And that's the beauty of Brazil. Like, Brazilian people are some of the most amazing, beautiful people. And don't you ever think anything different. I'm talking about from lunar, blue-eyed, blonde hair to dark preto. Preto is like dark skin. They are absolutely amazing. So we stopped and, went to sleep. Couldn't see anything. Woke up, and I was in, like, do you remember King Kong versus, King Kong and Skull Mountain? I woke up to, like, these huge alien looking, like, it looked like meteorites all around me. Just woke up because I had to get up and drive early. And I'm looking at meteorites. Like, it looked like Skull Mountain. Even with the pictures, you can't even imagine waking up and seeing these huge, like, megathons of huge, like, meteorites. It's nothing I've ever seen. And they're in all these weird positions that that this is not natural. This is not natural from this terrain. This is extraterrestrial. It is otherworldly. I've never seen anything like it. And I'm waking up, and this is what I was driving in. And you didn't even know. Okay? And this is the beauty of seeing something geometrical that your eyes haven't ever laid on. And I feel that the reason why I was triggered to drive is because I had to be literally woken up genetically. Because remember, my people come from there, and I'm in contact with aliens. Many of you know the beings that I'm in contact with there. Bonjour, bonjour. Comment ça va? Ça va très bien et tout. Je parle français. Lali. That's pretty. Très joli. So I'm being triggered by seeing geometrical shapes I've never seen before. They're off-worldly. So now my geometrical structures in my body are being triggered by this sight. And every place that I drove on this beautiful ride from Sao Paulo to Bahia was triggering a codon, my flux capacitor to literally open and start to work. Now I'm gonna tell you what that means in a minute. But what I mentioned with the flux capacitor, again, if you don't know what that is, watch. Again, I'm gonna explain what it is, but it's a form of technology that allows you to travel through dimensions, through densities, and through time. Time is a false construct. It's artificial. Our only concept of time is through physicality. Okay, physical things. Okay, and as I'm going through this terrain, I'm starting to experience forms of manifestation and thought that literally only need to be spoken and come into reality. Yes, my loves. You know, when they'd be like, oh, the secret, you just have to pretend like you want to be in the secret, and the secret is not a secret, and you just have to pretend and put vision boards, and you got to do all this cool stuff, and you got to pretend like you're in it to win it. My flux capacitor, the technology in my biosphere, my body, my XX, turned on, which allowed me to think thoughts come into reality. Remember, like, what was it? What was the Leva Genie was like this, right? She went like this. The Bewitched. Remember, she went da-da-da-da-da? Okay, literally within that moment. And I didn't notice it right away because at the time I'm trying to make it to my destination. I got my children with me. I'm trying to make sure I gotta get to my homegirl. So I'm on a mission. Now, I should have noticed at the time because every thought that was coming in my head was showing up, but I was distracted. So I was driving.